All right, so in this video, what I want to talk about is positioning of the shoulder, right? When we do pushing, especially when we're going, it really has to do with any sort of pushing away from the body. Okay, so if I'm pushing away from the body and it's somewhere in front of me or above me, there's some specific things that we look for. And this is really important when there's weight involved. Okay, so anytime we're like loading the system externally, with some sort of external load, like a barbell, that's where this is going to be most important. Okay, so when I'm pressing overhead, because in the Athletic After 40 program, one of the movements that we do with a barbell is we push weight over our head, right? And when we're doing that, the start position is ideally what we call the rack position, where the barbell is resting on the shoulders just in front of the neck. And when it's resting on the shoulders, it's centered over the middle of the foot, right? We have this precision instrument resting on the shoulders, my hands are on it like so, and we call this the rack position. And when I'm in rack position, one of the things I'm trying to actively do is bring these elbows up. Okay, so as I bring these elbows forward, what does that do to the positioning of my shoulder? It puts it in what's called an externally rotated position. So if you think of this ball and socket joint, this is externally rotated, this is internally rotated. Most of us are stuck in some form of internal rotation, okay? So that means that we want to try to improve our ability to get into external rotation. The beauty of external rotation when we're pushing weights is that it creates a more stable position for that ball and socket joint. Okay, if I'm internally rotated and trying to push, it creates some positioning issues, which can create some problems with the rotator cuff. And I'm sure everybody here has probably heard of someone or knows somebody who has had some sort of a rotator cuff injury, right? So it's really important that we make sure that we're placing that ball and socket joint in a really stable position. A position of stability will create some safety. Okay, so again, when I'm pushing weight, I want to be externally rotated in the shoulder joint. This is external rotation. And when I'm pushing something over my head, I want you to understand that the positioning of your elbow is what tells you what's happening in the shoulder. This is kind of like your tell. Okay, so if I'm constantly trying to pull the elbows inward and keep them inward, it means I'm maintaining external rotation. Okay, so notice as I'm pressing overhead, imagine that I have a bungee cord attached from the inside of this elbow to the inside of this elbow, and that bungee cord would always be sort of pulling me together, right? Obviously we don't have a bungee cord, so what you have to do is keep the muscles turned on to keep pushing, keep that pressure inward as you push overhead. And there's a good chance if you're not very strong, some of those rotator cuff muscles are not very strong, your body's going to try to find stability somewhere else. And it will find it in an internally rotated position. It's a lazier position. It's not as safe of a position. It's not as strong of a position, but it is a position of stability, but it's not one that we want to do a whole lot of repetitions and that we want to load. So as you're pushing, if you feel yourself wanting to do this, to press up, that could potentially be a problem with the positioning of the shoulders. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So as you're pressing, I want you to avoid doing this to get yourself overhead, okay? And I want you to focus on keeping elbows together as you push overhead. So notice my elbows, they track on this. If I were to draw a line, like a vertical line from the floor, I want those elbows to track on that line as I go up and as I come down. See that? As I go up and as I come down. So even as I'm descending, I'm still trying to keep those external rotator cuff muscles on to be able to keep that stability through that joint. You may find that your weight has to come down a little bit. If you haven't been doing this very well and you've been defaulting into an internally rotated position and you're able to press more weight, you may have to take a step back, but know that by taking a step back is we're positioning your shoulder to be in a better position, and in the long run, it's going to keep you safer and you're going to be stronger. All right, so it's really important to do that. So that goes for the push. Interestingly enough, it also goes for pull up. When I'm pulling up, still elbow in, elbow in, elbow in, instead of this, okay? All the same stuff. It's all the same ideas, right? It's all the same concepts of a very strong externally rotated position of that shoulder. So hopefully this makes sense. If you have specific questions on that, please reach out. But that's a key point that I want you to really, really focus on and really, really learn. And even if it means having to take a step back with the weights, so be it. Practice that position for longevity, for the safety of those pushing motions. Okay? All right.